Tashitele to everyone, and welcome to the Tibetan Grammar class on the text Tree of Excellent Speech. Today we're going to discuss the particle of tongue, and in the previous class we have discussed two of the usage cases, and we have already discussed a general understanding what this particle is. And so in this class we're going to study so previous class we did 3, so it was the inclusive, the differentiating, the reasoning case. And in this class, we're going to focus on the time case, advice case, to give advice to someone, and we have the inferential usage case. So usually we have the inferential usage cases in the next, usually we have a separate lesson in which we discuss the inferential usage cases. But the reason why I included here is one, the inferential usage case in this particular particle is not that long, meaning that there isn't a lot of variation in the inferential usage cases. Second, the fact that the inferential usage case is also providing a certain type of answer to one of the questions that was asked in the previous class about the use of tongue. So therefore, I thought by doing so, why not hit two targets with one stone? So before we begin our lesson today, let me first recite the verse of dedication to the Guru, the 3 gems, to the lesson, to the students. So let me recite this, and then with the most auspicious, with taking that as the most auspicious sign, we continue our lesson on the usage case of the particle of tongue. Okay, let me recite this in Tibetan first. So, Lama da gombo jizun jambe yang la chatselo. So, this is the line of worship, line of taking refuge. Okay, Junshin debu sangbo nam. Tuigi chawe yang da drup. Tuengi debu sangbo nam. Tsiki chawe yang da drup. Chuti trado pabayi. Teni ikon rapute. Ikjor yang da zungyur na. Tuensan tsiki duzi chung. Okay, so let me repeat this once more, so that I can give so that it could provide some impression on the way a verse is read. Lama tang gombo jezun jambe yang la chatselo. Junshin drebu sangbo nam. Tuigi chawe yang da drup. Tuengi drebu sangbo nam. Tsiki chawe yang da drup. Chuti trado pabayi. Teni ikon rapukte. Rapukte. Ikjor yangdar zungyur na. Tuensan tsiki duzi chung. Okay, so the English translation. I prostrate to you, O Guru and Lord Manjushri. So here we are taking refuge in Manjushri, the embodiment of the wisdom of the Buddhas of 3 times. So taking Manjushri and one's Guru to be one and non-dual, so non-duality of Manjushri and one's Guru, I prostrate with the 3 gates, that is the body, mind, and speech. Okay, the plentiful fruits of the tree are the result of the labor of time. The great fruit, so here the great fruit of meanings should be understood as enlightenment, the ultimate fruit, the ultimate stage of awareness, awakening. So the great fruit of meanings, which is the complete enlightenment, is the result of the union of words. Just like the just as said by Lama Tsongkhapa, the entire existence is a system based on imputation, mere imputation of the words. So therefore, result of the union of words. Because droplets of water falling on a boulder pierce a hole through it in duly time. So this is especially inspired from the biography of Asanga while he was meditating in the cave. While he was meditating in the cave, there were certain moments where he thought that he would give up, and then there were 3 instances which motivated him to go, and one of those was the droplet of water falling upon a very big boulder, and in a due time, even that small droplets of water with such perseverance. So this is a personification here. So such perseverance is capable of piercing through such a great boulder. So because droplets of water falling on a boulder pierce a hole through it if one perseveres in the knowledge of the union of words consistently, that is, then the word nectar of good meanings arise. So within them, so this is something that is as a result. So it's something as a result. If one perseveres, so this word nectar of good meanings arise within them. They become the Lord of speech. So Manjushri also is known as the Lord of speech. So if one perseveres in the knowledge of union of words, one becomes the Lord of speech, and within one, the word nectar of good meanings arises. Okay, so taking this verse of dedication as an auspicious sign, let us begin today's lesson. Okay, so this is the verse, 2 lines, sorry. Actually, it's the 2 lines taken from Tree of Excellent Speech, which introduces us to the particle of tongue. Not only that, it also introduces us to the direct usage cases of the particle of tongue. So, leishe jongwa le, tang ni tuji gyumzen tang, sekab tam nga la chu. So, from the Tree of Excellent Speech, the particle tongue is used for inclusive case, differentiating case, reasoning case, 3 of which we have already discussed in the previous class, time case and advice case. So these are the 2 which we will be discussing in this class, along with the inferential usage case. Okay, so time case, check up. Tangje tsikje chawe check up la jubani. Chawa khan shi chebam, che simpam, che gyu yimpa, che ki check up sam, jutu ngombar silve, joba la kokyo. Tangje tsik ngama check up tang, tsik chima, che kam, le ni chebar nuso. So the first part tells us the definition of the time case, the statement of the time case. The second part tells the function of the particle of tongue in this particular statement. So the first part of this, as you can see, the first part here till this point, it tells us the definition. It states that the time case, a usage case of the particle of tongue. So it's the usage case of a particle of tongue, and one of the direct usage cases, which is stated in the text of 30, that functions to show the time of an action. So this particular statement, what it does is that it shows the time of an action. It shows an action and the time when it was done. It shows the time when an action has been done, is being done, or when it will be done. So depending on the time, something that has already been done, something that is still being done, or something that will be done in the future. So dependent on that particular frame of time, the statement shows us the exact time or the time when the action has been done, is being done, or will be done. Now, the function of the particle of tongue in this type of statement is the particle of tongue connects the time of an action in the former part of the statement. So see, when we talk about the structure of a sentence, when we talk about the structure of a sentence, we have to understand that we have to talk about the different roles each part of this particular statement plays. So here in a statement of a time case, which is a usage case of the particle of tongue, we know that time case is also a case that is a type of statement, which is a usage case of the particle used in place of latin in the Latin, which is the subgroup of the 7th grammatical case, the time case. But here particularly, we're talking about a time case with the usage of the particle of tongue and not the particle used in place of la. So it's not the Latin, it's the tangja here, which we're using in the statement. So we divide the particular statement on the necessary components of that statement in 3 parts. The former part, the first part, being the time of an action, when the action is going to be done. It's known as the tsekap, the time of an action. The middle part being the connective particle. Now we see the purpose why it's called connective particles, because it's connecting the time of an action to the later part of the statement. And what is the later part of the statement? The later part of the statement is the verb or the action word. So we can either call it chawa, verb, or letik, action word. It's so we see that the former part of the statement of the time case, which is the time of an action, is connected to the later part of the statement of the time case, that is the verb or action word, by the use of the particle of tongue. So more or less acting like a conjunction here. It connects both of these. So therefore, this is the function of tongue, particle of tongue, in this type of statement. So keywords, important keywords to understand in this type of a statement. The first one is time of action. The second one is action, or action word or verb. These are the 2 things that are being shown here. And then we have the connective particle that connects both of these. Okay, so what is the characteristic? What is the defining characteristic of a time case as a usage of the particle of tongue? The first criteria one must understand is that you have to use the particle of tongue. This is the first criteria. The second thing is that it should function to show the time of an action when an action has been done. And the third criteria is that the particle of tongue should connect the former part of that statement, which is the time of an action, and the later part of the statement, which is the verb or action. And I'm going to repeat this again. I have done this multiple times in our previous classes during the previous semester, that we can definitely add more information to the statement. The statement could be more elaborate. It is not that the statement would just stop at time of an action, and then the connective particle. The other different explanation. You can add many other explanation to the statement. But like I said, all of these are not the necessary component to classify, to characterize, to understand a statement as a statement of time case. These are simply things that adds to the information that the time case has already provided. So another thing, very important thing, statement and sentence are not interchangeable. Are not interchangeable words. We must understand this in Tibetan. Because a statement could be a part of a long narration, which could be understood as a sentence. It could be a part of that particular long narration that is a sentence, or itself could be an entire sentence. But a statement is more or less to be understood as a combination of name and words This is what's the definition of a statement. It's a combination of name and words which gives a particular meaning. In certain classes, we have also used the word narration. So a statement which is of the time case can have other non-essential information to that particular statement, meaning that non-essential in the understanding of being the time case. The priority of a time case statement should be to provide the time of action. It should provide the action that has been done on that particular time, and it should be connected by the use of the particle of tongue. That is the priority of time of a statement of the time case. Any extra information definitely gives more elaborate information about the particular message that one is trying to convey. But in the understanding of time case, these are non-essential. Not non-essential to the message that has been given, but non-essential to the time case. So, therefore, a time case should function to show a time of an action and the action done at that particular time. And the particle that connects these two, the connective particle that connects these two, is the tangdra, or particle of tongue. Okay, let us move to the example. Perna, chiro chuzu shiba simba tang, nang tu chilo che. So it states, for example, so V is inferential here, returned to our homes when the time reached 4 p.m. When the time was 4 p.m., so when the time reached 4 p.m., we returned. So we see that here the time case where the action is to return home. But when the time reached 4 p.m. So it should so we should here we know that as a time as the time of an action, we have stated a particular time. Sometimes it could also be a particular action taken as a time. I will show you here in this in the example. But here we see that we have stated a particular time as a time of action, and the action is to return home. And we see that we have the time. The time is chiro chuzu shiba simba. This is our time of action, and the action is chilo che, nang to chilo che. Definitely, we can change this nang. Nang is not the essential part of this particular statement. The action here is to return home. And for that, nang becomes a part of that verb that is to return home. But the thing is that we can change it with other objects. So object of that verb. Here, the object of the verb is nang, home. It could be something else. Sahan to chin. It could be anything, depending on the very definition of that name which can be used here. So here we see that this is the time of the action, and this is the action that has been done. And the former part, which is the time of the action, is this, and the later part, which is the action, is this. And these two are connected by this particle, tang. So we see that this is an example of the time case. It fulfills all the criteria that tells us what a statement should be like if it was a statement of the time case. First, we're using the particle of tang. Second, we see that this statement functions to show the time of an action that has been done on that particular time. Third, we see that the former part is the time of the action. The later part is the action that has been done in that particular time. And then finally, we see that these two are connected by the particle of tang. So all the three criteria are fulfilled here. And so we can say that this is the statement of time case. Now, example. Time case. Example statement of time case. Okay, so the first, so you see that the first column is sekap, which is the time of action. The second column is chati, come, letsi, verb or action word. And then final is preacher, which is example. So let us first read the statement, example statement, and then we will identify which is the time of the action, which is the action. Saga dawat sebatang. When the month of Saka arrived. So inferentially, let's say day. Okay, so when the month of Saka arrived, they are doing more virtuous deed. They are doing more virtuous actions, more virtuous deed and more virtuous actions. So here we see. So definitely we can identify the tongue because it's the tongue. So the particle is tongue. Now the former part, which is the time of the action, which is Saka Dawa Tsekap, means at the time when it is Saka, month of the Saka. At the time, which is the month of the Saka. So we see that, which is the fourth of the Tibetan calendar, fourth month of the Tibetan calendar. So tomorrow is the first of that month. And then Keve le Mount to Cheshin mean that they are currently doing more virtuous deed. Because we know that the month of the Saka is known as the month, in Tibetan we call it Bumgyur Dawa. Bumgyur means that all the merits multiply 100,000 times in this particular month. So therefore, in Tibet, particularly in Tibet, in this in the times, even now, but also in the earlier times, what people used to do is that in this particular month, people would try to finish a set. For example, we have the treatise and the direct teaching of Buddha, Gangyur and Tengyur, and people would try to finish that within 1 month. And some would invite monks in their house to read that, and some they would make a time during the evening where everyone, from the oldest to the youngest, they would sit around. So if it was, they would sit around in a circle or in the kitchen usually, and then they would recite this text for duration. The older ones would recite more, the younger ones would recite as much as they could. And then in this 1 month, duration of 1 month, they would try to finish as the entire volumes. And so, and then people would go for pilgrimage. They would do more virtuous deed, and they would avoid more non-virtuous deed in this particular month. So, therefore, getting back to the topic, so Sagatawa Tsekap, at the time of Sagatawa, Gewe le Mount Cheshimpa, doing more virtuous deed, is currently doing more virtuous deed. So the action is doing more virtuous deed. And the time of that action is when the month of Saga arrived. Okay, now the second one. So here it's the time. The time is the time. It's a particular month. Ame Pöbatang Nang Tulo. When mother called, we returned home when mother called for us. So here we see that the time has to do with the completion of an action. And that action is mother calling us, the action of mother calling us. The moment when we heard that the mother was calling us, at that very moment, it became the time of the action of returning home. So we already noticed the particle tang here. The former part, ame peba, is the time of action. And the later part, nang tulok, returning to home, becomes the action. And connected by the particle of tang. So take up the time of action is ame peba, when the mother called. And the action is nang tulokpa, returning home. So it's not always necessary that we should state a particular time. Sometimes we state an exact time, sometimes a particular festive, sometimes a particular month. We can also use month as the time of action. If something is done either in that month or throughout that month. Okay. Now the third one, Nima nubatang karma tong. So here we directly notice that this is the particle of tang. And the former part, we can see Nima nupa tang. We see the Nima nupa means when the sun set. So the moment when it was sunset. Karma tong. One can see the stars. So the time of the action is when the sun set. And the action here, tongwa, to see, is seeing the stars. So one is able to see the stars when the sun sets. So the time when one is capable of seeing the stars, or one is seeing the stars, is when the sun sets. So this is the action, this is the time. So these are the example statements of the time case. Now moving to the next one, which is the advice case. Advice case. So to give advice to someone. 당지 칙지 담가를 주버니 꾸지 tar 당저나 xianla 담가 컴 럽저 갸베 되는 주. Okay, so this is the definition. So the advice case, a usage case of the particle of tang that functions to advise someone. So you use this to advise someone. You use this particular statement when you're advising someone. The particle of tang, when associated or written with an imperative case verb, it functions to advise someone. So when you have the imperative form of verb, and then you add the particle of tang right after that particular verb, then it becomes the statement to advise someone. So, penna lobchong ya po chetang kerang ki mitsela pento cheho. This is just to give an understanding how it becomes an advice. So this entire thing from here, this is actually not is the non-essential part of the advice case. Not non-essential in terms of conveying the message. Definitely, and when you're conveying the message, all of these are essential parts. But when we are talking particularly about the advice case, when we are specifically talking about the advice case, then the statement just becomes this too. Or in this case, this entire thing, because this is related to this. But this particular portion is non-essential. And here it just gives, it just describes what type of action one should be doing. Definitely you can change this. But when we talk about this particular statement, then this becomes quite essential here. Because whatever advice we're giving, this is the very advice that we're giving. So, lobchong ya po chetang kerang ki mitsela pento cheo, steady well. So we're saying study well. And to understand study well, we should have this entire statement here. Otherwise, we don't know what to do well. Or if we don't have this, we don't know how to do it. So this entire thing is essential to understand this advice. So we advise someone to study well. And then this part just tells us it will be a great benefit to your life. So it just adds, it affirms, or what it does is that it gives a certain type of reason why one should do that, because it will be a great benefit to your life. Therefore, study well. So this is the advice case when you give advice to someone. So this is the advice case. Now, for example, tamngala chu pepechu. So tamngala chu advice case. Tamngala chu pepechu. Example statement of advice case. Perchu, which means example statement. Kala yapo sotang. Eat well. Eat good food. Eat well. Meaning that it is an advice given to someone who needs to eat more, who needs to eat well, because they're not eating well. They're skipping the meals for reasons. And then this could also come. Now the non-essential part here, non-essential in the reference of the advice case, that part could say, never chagre. So if your body becomes weak, then you'll fall ill. That would be that could be the non-essential part of this, telling us. But when we talk about the statement, advice case statement, we can only state this. So kala ya so. And we see that this is the imperative of sa, which means to eat. Which means to eat, so so. So which means to tell someone to eat. So here as an advice. So in the Eastern Tibetan dialect, we have the same term. We say so so, kala so, to so, kala so, sama so. Sama, we say sama, which means food. Sama so, which means eat food. And it was like an advice, or it was like a imperative case where someone was telling us to do something. So at that time, it was like more in the colloquial system, in the colloquial Tibetan, or at that very time, many of these children and grown-ups used to say kalasa, kalasa. And we thought, oh, kalasa, that was the correct one. And so was something that was a thing that was only said due to mispronunciation in the countryside. But later it was understood that this was the imperative case, and that it wasn't wrong, but it was due to the lack of the knowledge that we had, the lack of the knowledge of our lack of knowledge, that we weren't able to identify that they were using it in imperative terms. So sotang means eat as an advice. Kala yapu sotang, eat good food. Tisu yapu titang, write in good handwriting. So advising someone to write in good handwriting. Because if you don't write in good handwriting right now, then you will adapt to the bad handwriting, and then it will take more time to improve your handwriting. Read your text well, read your scriptures well. So these are all advice. Now, the second type of advice is advice case as request, advising someone, but in a way requesting them to. Tadung Guzi Damga to Jupala, Regu Cheper, Yuching, Gulzi Tar, Tang Jarna, Regu Chepe turn to Jupang, want to sell. Moreover, the advice case can be understood as a request. So we can also understand the advice case as a request now. So advising them, but also requesting them, please do this. It's good for you. Do this. When the particle of tongue is associated with an imperative case verb, so when we associate the particle of tongue with the imperative case verb, similar to what we did with the advice case, it can show a meaning to advice. But now, because of the, it could be because of the circumstances, it is advice, but also a request in a way. So advice with request. So, penna, gigengi lob ti chetu, tonang chötang. Please pay attention when teacher is teaching. So, for example, it could be someone's guardian, parents, who is asking the student, please pay attention when teacher is teaching. So it's a advice, because one is saying this in order to benefit. One is saying this in order to benefit the other person. But now this is also mixed with the request. So unlike the first one, which is simply advice, there's no request there. Here we have advice with request. So we're advising, we're giving advice, but also in a way that we're requesting them to take action on the advice. So, please pay attention. So the actual statement is please pay attention. And then is non-essential in the reference to the advice case as a request. But as the entire message goes, definitely the entire thing is essential. But when we focus specifically on the advice case, and here advice case as a request, is non-essential. Okay, so we see that Tonan Chuetang here is an advice, but with a request. And like I said, it depends on this. It depends on the circumstances. The same statement, Tonan Chuetang, could also be used as simply advice. But the difference here is the one who is speaking. The intention of the one who is speaking, definitely it's to benefit, but one is doing it in a way that they're also requesting the other person to do it. Whereas the other one, just simply advising. So therefore, it depends on that particular type of circumstance, whether a statement is advice simply as advice or advice as a request. So, tamnga regular chupa, advice case as a request, tamnga regular chupe perchu. Example statement of advice case as request. Perchu. Example statement. Lega zangma chötang. Please do your work neatly. It could be understood in two ways. Please do your work. Please do your work complete. It could also be also understood as doing something complete or doing something neatly. But in any case, here we are requesting the thing. Please do your work clean or neatly, or please do your work complete your work or do your work completely. Don't leave any undone work. Just complete the entire thing. Or when you're working, don't make a lot of mess. For example, if you're cooking, when you're cooking, don't make a lot of mess. So, please do your work neatly or do your work completely. Second, please study well. Please study about the words well. So hike, which means the letters and the words and the names. So here particular letters. So study the letters well. Hike which means please study the letters well. And this is also understood as to study something. It's a general. It's also a general term for in the colloquial system. That is, it's also a general term for the entire context of education. So to study well, which means to study well, and it refers to everything, not only letters. It refers to math, science, and everything that is being taught in school. And other thing is also because in the earlier times, when students when the children used to go to study, and it should be also understood that many of the rural areas didn't have the opportunity to pursue education to a group so therefore many of them would be lucky to be simply literate, to be able to read and write. So therefore, by this context, understanding comes from this understanding, because they don't know what different subjects are there. They simply know that the children are going and studying how to read and write, and then other things. So therefore, becomes study well here. Sun is the honorific of nye, which means to listen. Please listen well to the teacher, or please listen well to what the teacher is teaching. So requesting. Advice as requesting. Okay, now with this, we're done with the direct usage cases, which are stated in the text of the 30. And we have also seen that in the commentary of 30, the Tree of Excellent Speech. Okay, now the inferential usage case. 堂弟主语数数电吧. means inferential usage case. The inferential usage case of the particle of tang. 堂着了数数电被主语你 明ngam signipar samjorwa. So inferential usage case of the particle of tongue is a usage case in which the particle of tongue is used to connect to name or word. So clarification on the term name, as you can see here. This is a term that we have used in this particular course. It was already something that we have been using from the beginning of this course. So name doesn't have a plural form. According to terminology developed for the Tibetan Grammar course, this particular Tibetan Grammar course, the name refers to all the general terminologies. It refers to all the general terms. So every term in existence is a name. Ming. And this is different from Mingzik. So one should understand that it's different from Mingzik. Mingzik is, in this particular course, when we refer to Mingzik, we will write it with the smaller n. So name, but with the smaller n. And that will have singular and plural. but not for the one with the capital that's referring to the existing term. So any Tibetan term is a name. But then under the name, we have Mingzik, which is the name with the small n, and then Zik, which is the word. So in the inferential case, Pang is used to connect either two names, a name and a word, or two words. Tela sumte chawan yi cham jo wa tang, ming yi cham jo wa tang, shidang chawa cham jo wa jeso. Okay, there are three types: to connect two actions, to connect two names, and to connect an action and the object. Okay, so the first one, chawan yi cham jo wa, inferential usage case of the particle of tang to connect two actions. chawan yi rim jian tang jikje do cham jo wa, which means to connect two actions that either happens simultaneously or one after another. So rimje means one after another. Jikjar means simultaneously, at the same time, happening at the same time. Penna. Hige tangwa tang lao tujor. For example, I, he, she, or they, so a subject, sent a letter and the receiver received it in their hands. So the sender sent a letter and the receiver received it in their hands. So first, the sender will send the letter. Then after, depending, like if the letter is something that, so considering that it's a letter, it's a written letter, and depends on where you're sending it. Either you're sending it outside your country or inside your country. Either you're sending it in inside your state or in a different state. It depends. And then and dependent on that, the duration of one receiving it will be depending on that. But either way, we understand that the action of sending the letter happens before the action of receiving the letter. So here the action happens one after another. And this is connected by the particle of tang. Yige tangwa, the first action. Lao tu jowa, the second action, connected by tang. So yige tangwa tang, lao tu jor. And then if you want to add more, you can add the name of the sender and name of the receiver. For example, we can say siring ki yige tangwa tang, zhe ki lao tu jor. So let me just add this. Okay. I'll take this. Okay. zhe ki 이게 tangwa tang sering ki latu jor. So as we can see here, now we have added the sender and the receiver. So this is something that's additional. It's non-essential in context of this particular inferential usage case. But we add this to give more information, like who is the sender, who is the receiver. And then you can also add how many days it took, like Nima. Nye. Jesu. Now we have also added after 5 days. So we can add all those information and make the sentence give more information. But as far as the inferential case is concerned, and this inferential case where you connect two actions, all of these are non-essential component. The only essential component is 이게 땅과 당 lao tujor. So receiving in hands, the sending the letter, and the particle, that connected particle that connects these two. So this is the first, and then the second one. Dede tuangi kundra shi tong. I, she, he, they, it looked and saw a statue of Buddha. So here we see that this action is simultaneous. The moment you look is the moment you see. You cannot say that I looked and then after a certain time, some certain duration of time that I saw. No, this is not possible. Definitely, like if you're first searching for what you're looking for, but when you look at the thing directly, the moment you look at that thing is the moment that you see. There isn't a minute fraction of time difference between these two. Therefore, it's called jikjar to tsamjorwa, meaning that these action happens simultaneously. The moment you look, simultaneously you see. So therefore, these are two actions, but occurring simultaneously. The first one was an example of two actions which occurred in order. One of the action happened before, and after the completion of the first action, the second action, the initiation of the second action happened. The moment Tashi sent that letter is the moment it started going towards Tsering. And then at a certain point of time, it reached Tsering's hand. In Tsering's hand. So Tsering received it. And the reason why Tsering received it was because the first action was completed. So we see that there's order in the action. So the first example, higi tang watang, lao tu jor, or zhe ki higi tang watang, nima nge che su, Tsering ki lao tu jor. Both of these are the same thing, more information in this one. It's an example of usage inferential usage case of the particle of tongue to connect two actions. It happens one after another. The second one is simultaneous. Now the second one, inferential usage case of the particle of tongue to connect two names. So we're connecting two names, in which we're connecting two naming words here. So Mingyi Chamjowa. So here it's Mingyi Chamjowa. Penna. Medang Chu. Again, the look to connect two names. For example, fire and water, a teacher and student. So that is the usage case here. So 1 minute, let me do one thing here. So we do this because it makes more sense after the explanation. Okay, so name, we're using this because yes. Okay, so we understand that we're using the naming words, small letter, and we're also using S with this. So to connect two names, so I apologize for this mistake. So we are using the smaller n for here because it's the naming word. It is not name in general terms. It is the naming word. So we're using names here. Lasso. So penna me tang chu gegen ta lo chu. So fire and water, teacher and student. So here we are using the term names because it refers to the naming words. Okay, so here this, and then 시당 차와 참 좋았어. Inferential usage case of the particle of tongue to connect an action and the object. Now we're connecting action and the object. And other thing, the difference between this and the inclusive and the separate and the differentiating case is that during the inclusive case, we include all of the subgroups into one collective. During the differentiating, we differentiate different subgroups from a single collective. Here, there is nothing about a collective here. So that's the difference between the inferential usage case to connect two names and the other one, the inferential and the differentiating case. Because here we don't talk about any collective class. Lasso. So now the final one, the inferential. So this is also an answer to a question that was asked in previous class. Inferential usage case of the particle of tongue to connect an action and the object. So she is the object, chawa is the action. Penna, shedang tempa, gyundang tumpa, timtang galwa. To connect an action and the object. For example, person or place with dharma. Demba here, it's the demba, which is the action. Che is the object here. To have or having good relations with others. Gyundang tumba. Gyun is the object. Tumba is the action. To do something or doing something against the law. Law is the object, and being against is the to go against or being against is the action. So all of these are type of the usage case in which we connect an action and the object by the usage of the particle of tongue. Okay, so with this, we're done with the lesson on the particle of tongue. We're done with the lesson of the particle of tongue. We have discussed the two remaining direct usage cases, and then we discussed the inferential usage case. So three subgroups under the inferential usage case, and two direct usage case were discussed today. The first one is the time case, where the statement functions to show the time of an action and the action done at that particular time. And in this particular type of statement, you have the first statement that has to do with the time of action. The second statement, which is the second part of the statement, which is the action done at that particular time, and the particle of tongue, which connects these two. And the second one, as we see, is the usage as advice, and then two type of the advice, just as simply advice. The other one as advice as request, and we simply use the particle tongue with the imperative case. And then we have the inferential case, where there are three types. First, connecting two verbs. Second, connecting two names, and then an action with an object. Okay, so let me see. Do we have questions? Last example. Which one? Last example. Yes. This is Tebata Tong. So it is Tebatang Tong. Tebatang Tuangi Kundrashi Tong. So this is Tang and not Te. Okay, so though the statement, both of the statement, this when we use the continuative particle, it functions the same. So we see that it functions to show two actions happening one after another. So what you do is you connect two actions. So the similar thing is done with the continuative particle. So tete tuangi ku kundrashi tong, or tebatang tuangi kundrashi tong. So the difference is the usage of particle. So yes, the difference is usage of the particle of tongue, meaning the same. It's the same meaning, irrespective of particle. Like I said, and I always emphasize, particles do not hold any leverage when it comes to the statement. It is the very nature of statement that decides how the particle should function. Okay, so before I read the final verse, do we have any questions? Any questions regarding today's lesson? Usually, if you use advice case, then normally it's someone either same age as you or younger than you. So you use it, but definitely you can use, if you're advising someone even elder, that is also possible if there's circumstances that you have to use it. So it depends on the circumstance, but yes, you can use for anyone if you want to advise someone. But usually when we use the imperative case, so this is something that has to do with the way and especially you know that the emergence, like meaning the composition of all of these texts happened in the 7th century. And at that time, we also have those 16 laws during the time of Songtsen Gampo, King Songtsen Gampo, in which one of the laws is to respect one's elders. And you see that it's very strongly ingrained in the culture of that particular time. So mostly the imperative case. And at that time, imperative case mostly used to command or to advise, not for request, mostly used for command and request. So usually not addressed towards the elders at that time, as a sign of respect, of showing respect. So imperative case, and in those times usually used for youngest or someone, if you want to advise someone same or younger than you. If you want to command someone younger or someone who is in lower position, let's say in the governmental office or anything. So, but yeah, now in this particular time and era, you can use it with anyone depending on the circumstance whom you want to use it with. Lasso. So before I read the verse, do we have anyone who wants to read the 4th portion? One of the benefit of memorizing the text, you see, is that when you memorize the text and when you have it in your mind, when you're able to recite it from your head, the thing is that it doesn't matter where you are. You can just simply sit. Like here we have like these fields, very large fields we have here. So we can just sit there and a cool, gentle breeze in the evening, and you can simply recite it from memory. And then you can recall the classes that you have and then refresh your understanding. So do we have anyone who wants to? Okay, so Yurila, please recite Lasso. Lasso.
Am I audible? So
Yes.
Ramatang gompo jetsun jampere la chazero on arapatsa nadi. Raruhi ayanang kampami konkonweke ao amki kontozek metan yopan 대신 내외 중근 가르칠 때 중근가라 간절두 릭등갈래 미둔래 느가 내다 코나죽 계단가이 배다때 벨제민기 토마르조.
Lasso. Thank you very much. And very wonderful pronunciation. So thank you very much for reciting. Now, before we end our class, most auspiciously, let me recite the final verse here. So it's just a single verse. So do we have a lasso? So let me recite this verse. Signor taki tönam norwe shower chun. Techer trebu misate dile tikwa chechi yu. So this verse is the, let's say the, when we have a coin, right? So we have 2 sides of coin. So this is the other side of the coin for the verse that we had during the previous class. It talks about the study of applying oneself in the study of the union of word as a great virtue. Now this is the flip side. It says that if signor taki tönamnor we chawartul teacher trebu misante dileti wacheji, which means the wrong words give rise to wrong meanings. Because of the wrong meanings, wrong actions arise, and therefore unpleasant consequences come to be. What greater sin is there than this? So last time we talked about the practice, applying oneself to the knowledge of the union of word is the greatest virtue, and asking what greater virtue is there. And now if one doesn't apply to it and then makes mistake in the union of word, then it gives a different meaning. If it gives a wrong meaning, it gives a wrong understanding. If it gives a wrong understanding, it gives a wrong action. If it gives a wrong action, it gives rise to unpleasant consequences. And it arises suffering. So what greater sin is there than this? Okay, so with this, we have completed today's class on the particle of tongue. So thank you very much for joining in on this lesson. And those who have any questions regarding the lesson, please ask the questions in the group or directly to me. The assignments will be sent, and yes, so please read, recite, memorize the text. It will be very beneficial. So please read and recite the text, revise the lesson, and if there is any question, ask me directly. Okay, or in the group. So Lesso, thank you very much, and I wish everyone a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, noon, or night, depending on where they are. Lesso, tashitele, and I'll see you for the next grammar class.